All right, so yesterday we did mostly the odd questions, so we're going to go back and do all the even ones today. When's your quiz? Tomorrow, Wednesday. And it's just on 3.5 and 3.6, and it's 7 questions. 7. All right, so looking at 2, should I solve with substitution or elimination? Substitution. So we would just take what y is equal to and plug it into y in our other equation. So we have 4x plus 4 is equal to 2x squared minus x plus 1. What should I do next? Make it equal to 0. I'm going to have to factor. So when we factor, it has to be equal to 0. So I'm going to move everything from the left to the right side. So subtract 4 on both sides. Combine it with like terms, and then subtract 4x on both sides. So 0 is equal to 2x squared. What's negative x minus 4x? Minus 5x, and 1 minus 4? Negative 3. All right, so here's when I factor. How do I factor when my leading coefficient is not 1? We multiply the first times the last. So 2 times negative 3 would be negative 6. What are 2 factors of negative 6 that add to negative 5? Negative 6 and 1. Perfect. So I would write x minus 6 times x plus 1. What do I have to remember to do? If I start by multiplying, I have to make sure I divide by the 2. So simplify if you can. If not, just move the number in front of the x. So this would be x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. Then from here, we just set both equations equal to 0. So x minus 3 is equal to 0. 2x plus 1 is equal to 0, and we solve. So we get x is equal to 3. Got to move the 1 over first, so 2x is equal to negative 1. Divide by 2. So x is equal to negative 1/2. Am I done? So I have to plug them in to find the y. So I'm going to start by plugging in 3. Just plug in 1 at a time. We can plug it into the second one since there's only one x in there. So it'll be a little bit easier. But if you plugged it into the first one, you should get the same answer too. So I have y is equal to 4 times 3 plus 4. So y is equal to 12 plus 4, 16. How would I write my answer? Perfect. 3 comma 16. Always your x and then your y. And then next, we want to plug in negative 1/2. I'm going to plug that into the same equation, the second one. So I have y is equal to 4 times negative 1/2 plus 4. How do I multiply fractions? Perfect. We put 1 under the 4 and multiply straight across. Multiply the tops together and the bottoms together. So y is equal to negative 4 over 2 plus 4. Can I simplify negative 4 over 2? What does it simplify to? Negative 2. And negative 2 plus 4? Just 2. So how would I write my answer here? Perfect. Negative 1/2 comma 2. Always your x and then your y. Let's look at number 4. So 4 is super similar to number 2, the one we just did. What should I do first? I can use substitution. So since I have a y equals and a y equals, I can just take what y is equal to and substitute it into the y. So I have x plus 1 is equal to 3x squared plus 4x plus 1. Now what would I do to solve? Got to make it equal to 0 so I can factor. So I'm going to move the x and the 1 over. So I subtract x and subtract 1. So now I get 0 is equal to 3x squared plus 3x, and then the 1's cancel. Now I factor. How would I factor this? I can take out an x, so I have a greatest common factor of x. What else could I take out? 3. So my GCF is 3x. So I'm taking out the GCF. What am I left with when I divide both of these by 3x? So 3 divided by 3 is just 1. X squared divided by x would be x. And what's 3x divided by 3x? 1. So it factors into 3x times x plus 1. What would I do next? Awesome. We set each piece equal to 0. So 3x is equal to 0. And x plus 1 is equal to 0. And then we solve for x. So x is equal to 0. And x is equal to negative 1. Once I find the x's, I just plug each of them in to find the y's. So I'm going to plug it into the second equation. So y is equal to 0 plus 1. So y is equal to 1. So here I have 0, 1. Then I do the same thing, plug in our second x into the x. So y is equal to negative 1 plus 1, which would be 0. So negative 1, 0. So these are our two answers. All right, let's look at number 6. So 6 I also have to solve with substitution because I don't have any variables that would eliminate if I combine the two equations together. But how can I solve with substitution? What would I need to do first? Perfect. I either have to get my second equation to be x equals or y equals. How can I get it to be either x equals or y equals? I'm going to move the y just because x is already positive. So it'll just be different steps if in the homework you moved the x, but you'll end up with the same answer. So I'm just going to move the y. So x is equal to 6 plus y. Once we get x equals, this is our new second equation. So these are the same thing, just written differently. So I'm going to take what x is equal to and plug it into x. So I have 6 plus y squared plus y squared is equal to 26. How would I do 6 plus y squared? I have to FOIL. So we did one of these yesterday. We have to FOIL. We cannot just distribute the squared. So it's 6 plus y times 6 plus y. So we FOIL. We have 36 plus 6y plus 6y plus y squared. And then the rest of the equation stays the same. So plus y squared is equal to 26. We combine like terms. So I have 2y squared plus 12y. And then I'm going to move the 26 over also. So that would be plus 10 is equal to 0. I kind of did a couple steps in one there. I put it in standard form to make it easier for us to factor. I combined my like terms and I made it equal to 0. What should I do next? I can factor. Instead of multiplying the first times last, which we definitely can do I have a GCF that I could take out? 2. I'm going to divide everything by 2 just to make this easier for us to factor. So I have y squared plus 6y plus 5 is equal to 0. And now I can just factor it normally. What are 2 factors of 5 that add to 6? 5 and 1. So y plus 5 and y plus 1 is equal to 0. So what would y be equal to? -5 and -1. You can just leave it on my desk. Thank you. And then we have to find x also, so I can just take this and plug it back into any of the first equations, but remember we said that this was the same thing, so I'm going to plug it into this one just because it's easier, but you could plug it into one of the 2 originals also. So I have x is equal to 6 minus 5, so x is equal to 1. So how would I write my answer? Careful, it's x first. 1 comma -5. So it's always x, then 1. And then I would plug -1 into the y. So I get x is equal to 6 minus 1. So x is equal to 5. So this would be 5 comma -1. So these are my 2 answers. So looking at 11, we have two separate inequalities, so we just graph them separately. So I'm going to start with the first one. How would I find the vertex of my first equation here? Negative b over 2a. Have to remember that formula. So negative b over 2a, I have my a, b, and c. So this would be negative 12 over 2 times negative 3. So positive 12 over negative 6, which would be negative 2. So the first number in my vertex is negative 2. How would I find the second number? Plug it in. So negative 3 times negative 2 squared minus 12 times negative 2 minus 9. So negative 3 times 4 plus 24 minus 9. So this would be 12 minus 9, which is 3. So the second number in my vertex is 3. So I'm going to go to my graph, go to the left to negative 2 and up 3. Now, how do I find my second point? Remember, we need at least 3 points for each graph. Plug in a number close to the axis of symmetry, which is my x value. So what's a number close to negative 2? Sure, negative 1. So let's plug in negative 1. So we're plugging in negative 1 into the x. So that is my x coordinate. I plug it in to find the y. So negative 3 minus 1 squared minus 12 times negative 1 minus 9. So negative 3 times 1 would just be negative 3 plus 12 minus 9. So this would be 9 minus 9, which is 0. So the y coordinate is 0. So go to the left to negative 1, stay at 0. Yes. All right, so there's our second point. Do we know where our third point is? Where? Negative 3. So we're one space away from our vertex to the right. We got to be one space away on the left too. Is my graph going to be a solid parabola or dotted parabola? Solid, because it's that less than or equal to. How do we know if it's solid or dotted? If it is less than or greater than, it would be a dotted parabola. If it is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, it's a solid. All right, and then the last step we have to do for this graph is to shade. What point can I test to shade? Sure, that works. So Mariana says negative 2, negative 1. We can plug in anything inside our parabola here. So you could have picked negative 2, 0, negative 2, positive 1. Anything that's inside, just not on the parabola. So negative 2, negative 1. So we're going to plug in negative 2 for x and negative 1 for y. So if negative 1 is less than or equal to negative 3 times negative 2 squared times negative 12 times negative 2 minus 9. So we would get negative 12 plus 24 minus 9, which is 3. Is negative 1 less than or equal to 3? Yes. So this is true. So where am I going to shade? Inside.
If it's not true,
right, so let's graph our second parabola here. How do I find my vertex? Negative b over 2a. What's my a? 1. What's my b?
0.
B is 0, and c would be negative 4. So this would be negative 0 over 2 times 1, which would just be 0. Anytime 0 is on top, it's automatically 0. So the first number in my vertex is 0. How do I find the second number? Plug it in. So this would be 0 squared minus 4, which would be negative 4. So I'm going to go to my graph. I stay at 0, go down 4. There's my vertex. Now, how do I find a second point? Another point on my graph. Plug in a number that's close to my x, so I can plug in 1. So I have 1 squared minus 4, which would be negative 3. So I go to the right one, down 3. If I have a point that's 1 space away on the right side, I know the mirror of it is also going to be a point. Is my graph going to be solid or dotted? Dotted, because it's just a greater than. That equal to is what makes it solid. So this is a dotted graph. Now we need to figure out where we're going to shade. So we have to test a point. What point can we test? 0, 0. 0, 0 is inside of our graph. That's going to be the easiest to work with. So 0, 0. So if 0 is greater than 0 squared minus 4, so 0 is greater than negative 4. Is this true? Yes. So where do I shade? Inside. Which part is my answer? The overlapping part. So just this overlapping part in here would be my answer. So you can erase everything else, or if you wanted to, just point, like draw an arrow, point to the middle part, say this is my answer. But you got to show me that you know that it's the overlapping part that is your answer. Any questions here?
Why is the overlapping part the only answer?
Because our equation, like our question here, is both of these inequalities. So, like, it has to satisfy both. So it's just the overlapping part. For the bottom questions, we are going to have to factor. And then when we write our answer, the sign is always going to be the same as the one in the question. So if I have a greater than sign, when I write my answer, it's going to have 2 greater than signs. These signs will always be the same, and it'll always match that sign. So let's take a look at 13. So I have to factor. What are 2 factors of 30 that add to 11? Bless you. 5 and 6. So I have x plus 5 and x plus 6. I'm just going to say it's equal to 0 for now because we'll deal with the greater than sign at the end. So we put them on the number line. So I could say like negative 5, negative 6. Oh, negative 6 would be to the left because that's smaller. Would I have an open or closed circle at negative 5 and negative 6? Open. So I put an open circle at negative 5 and negative 6. And then we're either going to shade in between or outside. How do I figure out where I'm going to shade? Test a point. What's a number I can test? Let's test 0. Let's test outside since inside we only have fractions. So let's test 0. We have 0 squared plus 11 times 0 plus 30 is greater than 0. So 30 is greater than 0. Is this true? Yes. So where am I going to shade? Outside. Since 0 is outside, we shade outside. So the graph is part of your answer, but we also have to write -6 x and -5. What sign do I put in between these? It's a greater than. Greater than. It's always going to match this. So -6 is greater than x, and x is greater than -5. Yeah, it opens to the left. But when it's greater than or less than, we put an open circle at those points. When it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, we would put a closed circle. So for these questions, you'll always have to factor to start to find your key numbers. Put them on your number line. Remember, your number line goes from smallest to largest. And also when you write this part of your answer, it should go the smaller number first, then the larger. All right, so for 15, I only have 2 terms here. How would I factor? Take out the GCF, 15. What's my GCF? X. So I take out the x. What am I left with when I take out an x? X minus 3. We're just going to say is equal to 0 for now. Because I'll do the less than part at the end. The less than just goes in our answer. Right now we're just trying to find the key numbers. So we're trying to solve this. We're trying to factor. So then from here to solve, we set each piece equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. X minus 3 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 is one of our key terms. The other one is going to be 3. So when I put those on a number line, remember it's smallest to largest. So I could say 0's here, 1, 2, 3. Your number line is going to be blank, so just make sure your key numbers are on it. At 0 and 3, am I going to have an open circle or closed circle? An open circle, because it's just a less than sign. So this tells me that it's an open circle. So an open circle at 0 and an open circle at 3. Now I need to figure out if I'm going to shade in between or outside. So what number can I test? Sure, let's plug in 1 to test that. So I have 1 squared. It doesn't have to be in between. It could be anywhere on the number line. So 1 minus 3 is less than 0. So this would be -2 is less than 0. Is this true?
No.
Yeah, -2 is less than 0. So it works. So where am I going to shade? Inside. Since 1, that number that we picked, is inside, that means I shade inside since it works. So now when we write our answer, our key numbers were 0 and 3. You always start with the smaller and then the larger. What signs do I put for my answer? Less than. It's always the same as the question.